Welcome to Tenacious Entrepreneurs, where perseverance meets purpose and every setback is just another step forward. Join us as we dive into the journeys of entrepreneurs who faced failures, embraced change, and emerged stronger than ever. Whether you're dreaming big or already on your way, this podcast is here to remind you that the end is only the beginning. Stay inspired, stay tenacious, and let's conquer the entrepreneurial world together.
Hey, thank you guys. It's Joseph Dupont coming back to you live on the Tenacious Entrepreneur podcast. And today we have a special guest. We have Mark May. He's with Sitealytic, and he's a good friend of mine that we've been friends for years. And I just invited him on the show to be able to give us some insights on some of the catastrophes and benefits and tools that he's ways to move back into the market with his brand and with his life. But Mark, thank you for coming to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. It's great to have you on the show. So Mark, catch us up a little bit on what you're doing now. Like, what do you have going on? What do you?
Yeah, so, we're really excited about Sitealytic. So we decided, about 6 years ago when we really dove hard into the digital marketing, web development world, something I'm passionate about. And I kind of stumbled into that industry to begin with anyway. So we're very passionate about the industry, but somewhere along the line, we kind of pivoted and said, how do we provide a service without having to work so much? So that's kind of where we've decided to kind of pivot our business. So we built out our SaaS platform to allow businesses to kind of run their own marketing. And of course, we can hold their hand all along the way. We could do the work for them, but our software really is kind of helping small businesses, solo entrepreneurs be able to actually afford to operate like a big business. Yeah. And that's really what we want to do.
That's excellent. I think that's probably where we first got connected at, I think, was in the RV dealership, huh?
Yeah, that was first. And then, of course, through your family, through your father. Yeah.
Through my dad. Yeah. Well, take us back, man. I want to go back to whenever let's picture okay, you just got out of high school.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to take you all the way on back, dude.
Man.
I'm going to take you all the way back. Where'd you go to high school at?
So I graduated from Walker High School in Walker, Louisiana.
Hub of the universe, right there.
Come on, man. That's God's country right there. The grass is a little bit green.
And it go Lions? What's Walker?
No, they're Wildcats.
Wildcats.
Yeah,
okay,
Wildcats. That's right.
So you grew up, you graduated from Walker, and you went into college, or you just went straight into business? What did you do?
No, I actually didn't do either. I was kind of on a journey of who am I. My dad was sick.
Your dad was sick with what?
My dad had a brain tumor back when he was in his early 20s. And then kind of overcame that a little bit. But then after the brain tumors, whenever there's four of us and the youngest daughter, and then of course I'm the youngest sibling completely. So us two was born after.
So I'm the youngest too, so I can tell you as the youngest, we're the favorite.
So which is why we're simpatico.
Right. We're the favorite, yeah. But I think it's also the problem is our older siblings taught us a lot of bad stuff.
Yes, and I think resentment is probably the biggest thing that they've taught me because they always say that I'm the baby of the family, so I get babied. You know how that is.
Oh yeah. I understand. So you ended up going in business. I mean, sorry, you said you went to work for somebody?
Yeah, so I actually took off, went to New Mexico on a motorcycle, really had no direction in life.
Okay.
Stumbled, the reason why I went to New Mexico is I've got an uncle who was a pastor there, and then he kind of put his arm around me and said, you're going to work for me. He was a plumber. He owned a plumbing company. So, I prided myself of being number one in the number two business, And then after about a year, I realized this is not the industry for me. Played a little music at his church, and then eventually moved back to Louisiana and kind of fell my way into the car business, and that's kind of how I got into sales and started getting a taste.
So you got your first actual job though, like outside of your family, was like the car business?
Yeah, probably my first real job was working in the chemical plants of all places, and that was yet again another process of elimination. I do not want to be in the chemical plant. It made a lot of good memories, a lot of good people, but
so fast forward, like when did you actually start your first business?
My first business was started in 2004. I decided to start an insurance agency while I was selling cars, because if anybody's ever in the car business as a salesperson, you work your entire life to get out of the business.
Yeah.
And it's just tough because it's just a good way to make some good money without really having an education. So I formed an insurance agency, got in with a couple of carriers, started offering that. And then, I don't know, about 2 years into that, I felt like it wasn't working. I couldn't devote that much time. So I folded that LLC and just stayed in the car business.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was my first taste.
Yeah. So at what point did you move into where you had a business partner and stuff like that? What was the business you started with that?
Yes. So in 2009, I got hired by a guy by the name of Mark Mader, who became actually my mentor. So he was one of those guys that not only hired me to work for him, but he put his arm around me. He mentored me in business. He mentored me spiritually. We did Bible studies together. And eventually, within about 2 years, I became his partner on a small agency, and we were offering insurance products to car dealers. So I could stay in the car business, but I could also utilize the insurance knowledge. And that was really my first taste of what I consider success, because I was becoming successful in multiple areas of my life,
Yeah. So at some point, you got out of that business.
That's right.
And where did you land?
So I stayed in that business, and what's funny is I still have a piece of that same business that I stayed in. But in 2013, tragedy struck in our family. So, my wife at the time was kind of struggling. My father-in-law was struggling. I was struggling. We were kind of going through some legal issues with her grandfather, and it just put a big strain on our marriage. So we ended up going through a divorce, and no ill feelings, no nothing other than we should have stuck it out. And I tell all married couples, man, just stick it out. I promise you, there's life on the other side. But we just weren't strong enough to do that. So through that, I ended up resigning from that position and just really started seeking help. And I'm not ashamed to say that I even spent about 2 years in counseling myself, just trying to get my head right, understanding, where did I go wrong with this?
I think that's interesting, man. The counseling is something I see so many people that they put a stigma on it.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that, like, really it's just a tour guide. I mean, if you go to, I don't know if you've ever been out of the country, but if you go out of the country, if you don't get a tour guide,
right,
you find yourself roaming around in the villas of Italy, but you haven't seen anything. Like, you don't know where. You're like, oh, my parents went to Israel, and their tour guide was a cabbie.
Yeah, that's right.
And they said, look, we didn't want one of them tour guides that actually took us to all the touristy places. We wanted to see like what was real heart of it. So that's all really, to me, like a counselor is he's a tour guide to sort of help you figure out like how to navigate through it.
Yeah, right.
So you went through counseling, and
absolutely,
and that helped you a lot.
Yeah. So we live in a culture that it's just we're supposed to, as men, we're supposed to just kind of muscle through and man up, and let's just suck it up and move to the next one. And that's kind of how my dad raised me as well. It's just that generation didn't really know better, right? So for me, the counseling is what helped me more than anything. I got a really good advisor to kind of just help me work through discovering not just who I am, but what part did I play in all of the failures that I've had up until that point. And once I was able to own that, then I started an insurance agency, just like what I was working with my partner.
I want to drill down on this a little bit, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, because I think that's really some of the most important juice that we need to squeeze out. Like,
well, come on, squeeze.
What I'm saying is that so I remember I went through a divorce,
right?
And I remember sitting down with Pastor Larry Stockstill, and he was my mentor, and he was somebody I was super close to. And the first thing he said when I sat down was, he said, "Joey, I need you to understand, you're the problem." And I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
My wife left the church and she went with this homeless guy and took off. And I go, what do you mean I'm the problem?
Right.
Like I'm the wounded warrior here. You should be helping me. And he said, no sane woman that is prayed over and covered and protected is going to seek out instability from some homeless person to go off with them. And he said, let's evaluate where maybe you went wrong. Right. And so he dug down, and for me, that was the most cathartic thing I think that happened to me. It was very hard. Now looking back, I don't think I could ever have that conversation with somebody and so directly. But I think that's probably like a key if you're struggling in a marriage, if you're struggling as a man, and you've gone through a divorce, for God's sake, before you go and ruin some other poor woman's life, you need to sit down and actually evaluate, like, hey, what am I culpable for? Like, what did I do And same thing in business. If you lose a business, like the first thing we do in losing a business is like we have a tendency to sort of go back into, well, yeah, but it was that banker, or yeah, it was that guy over there. Well, he did this, and every time I sit down and talk to guys, it's like, if they can't really come to grip with,
right,
what did I do?
Yeah.
How did I, mess up? What can I do different? Because otherwise, you're going to get in the same bind again with the next person you marry. You're going to bring the same baggage into the marriage.
That's right.
You bring the same baggage into your business, and so you got to learn those skills. So, tell me about like what happened. Like you said, you dug down and you found the cores.
Yeah.
Like, is there something you feel comfortable talking about? I don't want to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm full of transparency with almost anything. So yeah, ask away. But where I felt like that God was really impressing upon my heart to take ownership. I kept hearing my dad used to always say growing up, he said, you got to own it before you hone it. Before you can hone down in on what you're doing, you got to own it. And he was saying that kind of just in jest, because he and I kind of always had a goofy personality, and we would laugh and cut up. But as I got older, I kind of realized what he was saying is that everything you just said is kind of hitting the nail on the head. I could sit here and tell you things I didn't like about my ex-wife, my ex-partner, business partner, clients, whatever. But at the end of the day, the common denominator was always me. So what am I doing? And I think you hit the nail on the head. If I would get up and do exactly what the Bible says, which is seek first the kingdom and all its righteousness, and what that then will allow me to do is understand that I have to pray for everything in my life. I have to pray without ceasing. I've got to pray for my enemies. I've got to pray for my friends. I got to pray for my family, and I just got to cover them in the Holy Spirit. That whenever I do my job correctly and I walk upright with obedience, then everything else kind of falls into place. So if things are not falling into place, sometimes it is circumstantial, and that's where discernment comes in. But more often than not, our problems are not circumstantial; they're self-inflicted.
Yeah, I remember I was reading in the Bible. I was reading about the story where David had brought, like, he'd become king, and the ark of God was like out of the city of Jerusalem,
right, and
he was bringing it back into the city of Jerusalem. And Uzzah reached out, and they had the ark of God on a cart, and they were bringing it into the temple, and they were dancing, and everybody was having a blast, and the oxen were dragging it, and the oxen stumbled, and the cart almost tipped over,
right,
and Uzzah reached out and touched it to stable it, and God struck him and killed him.
Yep.
I remember I read that this last week, and I was thinking, man, that doesn't even seem fair. Like he was doing the will of God. He was bringing the presence of God into Jerusalem, and it identified with me so much, man. Like I feel like that, in what God showed me was that it wasn't the fact that that he was not doing the will of God. It's the fact that he hadn't consulted God. Right. If you read the next chapter, when it talks about, like, later on, the ark went into another person's house, Obed-Edom, and he got blessed, and his entire family and everything was blessed. And then finally David was like, whoa, let's bring the ark back in. The second time, it says that he consulted the priest,
right,
and he asked them, how should we carry the ark of God? And they said, we're supposed to have poles, and it's supposed to be priests to carry it, and you're supposed to. He hadn't even consulted God to ask him.
That's right.
And so just because we're doing the will of God or doing good, it doesn't mean that we're always doing it right.
Yeah.
And I think in those good times, we have a tendency not to ask God,
right,
like, what should we do this? How should we do this? Why should, give me direction, not just should I do this, but how should I do it? I know for me, I'm right now, I'm buying another business, and I'm evaluating right now in this moment. Like I'm in that phase of, like, okay, what should I do and how should I do it? Like I know I should,
yeah,
but now it's a how. And I think that's so hard, man, because in the struggle,
sure,
I guarantee you, dude, if the bank calls and says you owe $1 million and you're going to lose your house, you're on your knees asking God, how? What should I do? How should I do it? What do I need? But it's in that good time that it's right, like really hard to lean in and ask God, like, hey, give me direction on what to do. So I mean, that's a good word, man, that you're saying. Like if you learn, like, hey, I need to lean into God,
right,
and ask Him how to do it. So walk me through, like, you had a bad business relationship, a partnership that broke up. What happened? Like what
Yeah,
what was that business?
So that was the first. We launched an agency for the dealership. So I had a partner that wasn't being as faithful as he should have been financially. Money that should have been directed into a dealer's bank account or even an insurance underwriter's bank account was coming into one of our escrow accounts and then getting used for like commission payroll and stuff like that. And
robbing Peter to pay Paul. I mean,
correct. Yeah. And so it only took about 60 days of that for me to kind of discover what was going on so I could pull the plug. But by then the damage had been done. So it kind of hurt. It's one of those things that kind of right back to what you were talking about. Two people can be doing the same thing. One's blessed, one's not. And, it's because the one that's blessed is spiritual and the one that's not is habitual. So, at what point in time does the consultation start, right? And that's kind of where I was kind of in habitual mode. It's like I knew I'm showing up to the office, I'm making my calls, I'm shooting my emails, but I'm not really following where I should be. So even though it wasn't necessarily my direct actions that was causing the problem, where I faulted was the fact that I didn't inspect what I expected. I didn't keep my thumb on the pulse. I wasn't seeking the Lord every morning before I did anything and maybe get some discernment that something was a little off kilter so we could figure this out. I could sit here for an hour and tell you what I did not do.
Yeah, but
at some point.
I think that's a key. Like, you're talking about seeking God. And I feel like that in business, a lot of times, as believers in business, I feel like that we prioritize everything, and I know that I do. Like I set out, I've got goals for my day, for my year, for my month, for my 10 years. I've laid out plans. I review those plans. I know what I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to be doing it. But whenever I look at like the priorities in my life, if you sit down and actually did a time management and did actually like an hour by hour, just write down on your phone, what did you do this last hour? What did you do this last hour? Now read that the next day and I can tell you what your actual priorities are and where you're going to get.
Right.
Like if you watch Netflix for 6 hours and you were on Facebook for 12 and you like either you're going to be an influencer or you're going to be broke because you don't have any. But it's the same thing. Like, are we prioritizing God like to where there's certain things that are like unmovables.
Right.
They're like, hey, I may not brush my teeth, but I'm going to pray.
Right.
Yeah. If I don't have time to to get in the shower, I'm going to pray, and I'll literally go the day without a shower. If I don't have, you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's right.
Like, are we putting that as a priority?
Yeah.
That hey, God is first, or are we just giving lip service? If we're just saying God's first, but then we evaluate our week. And we see that we prayed a total of 20 seconds in the car on the way to a job interview or whatever we're doing with people. Like that's not actually putting God in the right place. He wants to be our senior partner.
Agreed.
He doesn't want to be somebody that's just consulted whenever stuff goes wrong. I tell guys all the time, it's like I feel like before I went through this heavy trial in my life, God was more of the janitor. I'd call him on aisle 8. I got to clean up, God. Got to get over here and take care of this because there's a problem right here. I need to make sure we got something that we can clean up this mess. And I would tell him how to clean it up and what to clean it up with. And I'd give him all direction and everything. But I didn't go to God and say, hey, God, should I buy that gravel pit?
Right.
Should I buy this over here? Should I? What do you think? And then therefore I didn't ask him, so I can't blame him for the misdirection.
Right.
So I think that's key, man. It's like you're saying, like, hey, I learned that I need to pray and ask God.
That's right.
So I want to dig down, like in the moment where you realize, okay, it's getting real. Everything's hit the fan. I've got to close. I've got a business partner this crooked. How did that go? Like, did you just like close the door and lock the door and leave? Or?
Oh, yeah. It was almost abrupt. So I got a phone call from one of the lenders that was fronting the cash. And as soon as he called me, I'm like, hold up, time out, let's pull the plug. So I started looking. And then as soon as I check the bank account, I make the phone call. I go into QuickBooks, the usual, all the stuff that I should have been doing all along the way. But, trusting is one thing, but not verifying is on me. So as soon as that happened, I called him, and then he didn't call me for probably a couple of days because he knew where this was going. So I called everybody in the office. Luckily, I had a little cash tucked away, and we had 4 employees, and I laid them all off. And I said, effective immediately, you guys don't have a job, and I'm sorry, but there's nothing I could do. However, I have enough money tucked away for the next 90 days for you guys to have a paycheck. So go
Figure out what you're going to do.
Go figure out what you're going to do. You're paid for the next 90 days. Your insurance is covered for the next 90 days. Just go.
And so that talk to me about, okay, now the next morning, I want you to sort of vision back to that next morning. Like, what did you do? Like, how did you move forward? What was the...
Well, after I woke up and cried for an hour and realized...
I guarantee you talked to God, too.
Oh, man, I was pleading. I was like, Lord, please help me with this. And, just like most people who move fast, I'm always the type of person that never stop moving, always got something going on. So a part of me was like, well, I just need to figure out something to do. What can I do? So the next morning, I just kind of got up, made a few phone calls, started compiling the lists. They emailed me the list of everything. I got a total of what all was embezzled. How much money do I owe to make this go away? Didn't really figure out how to pay that because it's like I don't have this money. I don't have this money. Yeah. It's like they're like, well, and they were friends of mine. That kind of made the matters worse. Is the money that's missing belongs to a friend, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be rocky. So he's like, man, just pay it back and we're good. I mean, I've known you for a while, and I'm like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know if I can. And so then that just. I kind of had to let the legal system take over. They kind of swept it on. So for about 6 months, I didn't really hear anything other than he would text me every now and then, said, is your financial situation better? I'm like, well, we had to repivot. I formed another agency, got rid of my partner, started going after some of our other business. And then also we had just purchased Sitelytic from another friend. And so, there was some revenue coming in, but I was at the point where there was only enough revenue coming in really that could cover some of my bills. I mean, I couldn't hire nobody. I didn't have any escrow accounts or extra to pay anybody. So I'm really kind of freaking out, but also parts of my day, I'm sweeping it under the rug. Like, I don't know what to do other than just to go to work. And then about a year and a half later is when the wolf come knocking on the door. And that's when the state police was like, hey, we have to investigate you. And then, when all of the kind of the crud hit the fan, so to speak, all of the paper trail kind of came down to where, it was one of these, I have to kind of take my butt whooping and pay this stuff back, but then I can go after him legally. But they want to come after me criminally, but I can only go after him civilly. So now I've got pending felony charges against me on something I didn't even really know what was going on. So then I went from panic mode to pray about this to extra panic mode to pray about this. Then the state police show up, and now I'm in freak out mode because, I don't know if you've seen me. I won't do well in prison, right? So we got to figure some things out, right? So we just put our head down, and my family all rallied around, and they're kind of like me when it comes to stuff like this. Say, look, it doesn't matter who's at fault. How do we fix this and make sure it never happens again? So that really brought my family pretty close together, my brother and two sisters and my mom, and we just kind of rallied around and just start chipping it away, chip little by little, and made some agreements to where everything goes away if restitution was paid. And then I prayed long and hard about this, but my attorney and I, we just sat down and said, you have opportunity right here. We can go ahead and we can file charges against him. It's only going to be civil, but do you want to go after him? And I prayed on it, and I prayed on it. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't have peace about filing suit against him. Don't know why. I still to this, I may never know why, but I never got peace about it. So I woke up and I know that God told me to say, hey, he reminded me of the story of, the man that was in jail. He was in debtor's jail in the Bible, and then the king forgave his debt. And so he rejoiced and celebrated by going put somebody who owed him money in jail. Right. So when he was forgiven, he wouldn't forgive. And so I just looked up, and I know that God said, it's time to move on and cut that out and be done with it. So we decided not to move forward and file charges or file suit. And from that day on, our businesses have done very well and have thrived. Yeah.
The thing I can say is that I went through a horrible divorce, and my ex-wife had gone off with a homeless guy that I had hired, and I bought him I rented him an apartment and got him a place to stay, and she'd gone off, and so we went through a divorce after, and it was tough because I'd been leading marriage counsel retreats, and we'd done all kinds of stuff for the church, and so we just it was a catastrophic fail,
Right.
like of epic degree. It'd be like, I can't imagine how do you explain it. It'd be like, the guy that's the famous guy that comes in and fixes restaurants, and he opens the restaurant and it closes down.
That's right.
And it's like, okay, I how do I fix this? But I remember I'd gone through, our church had did like a 21-day fast.
Right.
And we went through the 21-day fast at the beginning of the year. It was, January. And I remember I got through it that night, the ending of the fast. I called my guys over. I had 12 guys that I mentored, and I called them over to pray, and we prayed from midnight to 6 a.m. And then at the end of the time, I was wiped out, and I hadn't eaten, and I was, we're about to break the fast, and and so the Lord told me to write a letter, and I thought, well, okay. I journal a lot, so I was like, okay. I break out my journal, and he says, no, get loose leaf paper out. Okay, I got loose leaf paper out, and I started writing, and I wrote what he told me to write, and it was really strange. It was, I, Joey Dupont, being of sound mind and body, do hereby release you. I remember it almost like verbatim, Darren Beater, from this transaction that happened, and not only do I release you, but I nullify any argument against you, that it was not your fault. It was my fault for putting you in the situation with my wife where y'all were alone and did all this. And it was all this great stuff that I thought, I when I got through, I wrote it down, and I cried while I was writing, and I was like, okay, God, that's healing. I put it in my Bible, and God said, bring it to him. Now, you got to understand, for the first 3 months, I rode around with a gun in my truck, and I was trying to find him to kill him. Yeah. I wasn't being spiritual. No. I was ready to kill this guy. And so this was fresh. I mean, this had been about maybe a year, probably about a year in. Right. And so I was like, okay, God, I called. Thank God I've been fasting for 21 days. I was spiritual enough at that moment where I could handle it. And I remember I called my ex-wife, and I said, hey, I want to go bring this letter. Or I said, where's Darren? That's the first thing I said. And there was a long pause on the phone. And she said, what do you want to know? And I said, well, I need to bring him this letter and tell him I forgive him and, and stuff. She said, well, he's in the hospital. And I was like, okay, well, what hospital? Well, he's out of Lady of the Lake. And I said, okay, I appreciate it. I hung up with her because we didn't talk at that moment. Like at that time, we haven't really reunited our friendship or anything. Right. And so I hung up the phone, and I got in my truck, and I was driving to the hospital. Well, I called the Bible and Book Center. I don't know if you remember that place. It used to be. It's closed now, but I called the Bible and Book Center, and I had a standing order of one-year Bibles for my men that I would mentor. Right. And I said, hey, I'm going to pick up a Bible. I need it to be engraved to Darren Beater. And I said, I'm going to pick it up and go bring it to it. So I went to go pick up the Bible. And when I picked it up, I read the engraving on it, and I'd forgotten that I told them to put a scripture on the Bibles. And the scripture they put was 2 Timothy 2:22, find a faithful man and commit to him these things. That's the scripture I wrote on the front of the Bible of the guy that stole my family. And I'm thinking, God, if this ain't irony, okay, God. Yeah. And so I go to the hospital to bring him the Bible. And I remember I went into the parking garage, and the parking garage was 5 stories. And I had pastoral credentials because I was a deacon or whatever they call it at Bethany. I wasn't a deacon, but I was somebody that was a leader at Bethany. So I had credentials where I could go visit people. Right. And all those spots were taken. I drove up into the thing. There wasn't one. I don't know if it was like meet your doctor day or what, but it was not one parking spot in the entire building. It was cold. And so I didn't want to park outside, but I went ahead and went to the outside parking lot. Right. There was not one parking spot out there. I had to drive all the way to the doctor's offices and actually park out there, like a mile, almost a mile, or at least 3/4 of a mile down the road. And whenever I parked out there, I remember I started to get out of the truck, and when I got out of the truck, it started sprinkling, and it's cold. This is January, and it was cold, and so I didn't have. I was halfway to the hospital. Right. I didn't want to turn around and go back and get an umbrella, so I just went ahead and ran, with the Bible over my head. And I got in there and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a Darren Beater." And the front desk said, "We don't have a Darren Beater here." And I was, "Okay, well, look again." "No, we don't have a Darren Beater here." So I reached my pocket to grab my phone and call my ex-wife, and I didn't have my phone. I left it in the truck. So I'm not spiritual at this moment. I'm a little bit frustrated. And I get in my truck, and I get run back out, and I run through the rain, and by the time I get back to the truck, I'm actually damp. It's not pouring rain. It's just misting, sprinkling, but I'm wet. And I'm frustrated. I call my ex-wife, and I give her a scathing, message because she didn't answer the phone. How dare you leave me over here? And you're lying to me, and it's just stupid as can be. And I gave her what for, and I threw the truck in reverse, and the Holy Spirit said, stop. And I remember I slammed the truck back into park, and it rocked. It was so, I remember it rocking. And I said, okay, God, what? Like, what could you possibly want me to do? How could I possibly, make it any worse? And he said, just wait. And the phone rang. And I remember it was my ex-wife. And so I said, why would you, I gave her the riot act, why would you do this? And she said, look, he made me promise not to tell you. And I said, well, tell me what? He's in the mental ward behind the hospital. He tried to commit suicide. And I was like, okay, all right, I can deal with this. I said, I need to go see him. And she said, well, you can't. You have to be invited to go in, and you have to be proven by the doctors. And she said, I've got an appointment at 4 o'clock. I'll go in and go, let you in with my appointment. I'll bring you in with me, and then we can go in there. And so I had to wait by now it was probably 10 o'clock. I waited from 10 to 4. It's the longest day of my life because the whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't want to do this. I don't even want to go there, and yet I got to go there. So I finally get there, and I go into the room, and my ex-wife was sitting in the waiting room, and they let me in because I had credentials, pastor credentials. They let me in to go see him, and I went in there, and I remember I saw him, and his eyes got big when I walked up, and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I had my Bible. I had the Bible in the box with the letter in the back of the box. Closed. And I said, well, I came here to give you this Bible and pray for you, man. And he said, oh, well, all right, I guess. And so I gave him the Bible, and I was about to pray for him, and the Holy Spirit said, give him the letter.
You can't run from it, can you?
Give him the letter. Come on, God. Like, I don't want to give him this letter. So I pull out the letter, and I give it to him. Yeah. And I say, hey, I'm supposed to give you this. And as soon as I did this and to put it in his hand, God said, read the letter. Okay, God. I'll read the letter. I pull it back because he's on, he's on drugs, and he's not. And so I start to read the letter, and I get to I, Joey Dupont, being of sound mind and body, do hereby release you, Darren Beater, and I said his name, and when I did, he said, what? He looked over my shoulder and he said, where's Lauren? And I said, she's in the lobby, she'll be in a minute, and I kept reading. Now I'm crying, I'm bawling, snot coming down, and he's not affected, and I continue reading, he interrupted me 3 more times. When is she coming in here? Why are you here? When is she coming? And I remember I got through reading the whole letter, and I did everything. I gave it to him. I prayed over him. I gave him the Bible, and I walked outside. And by this time, the sun came out. It stopped raining, and when the clouds part, and and you see the sun, and I was pissed. Just to be quite honest, I wasn't having a spiritual moment.
That's right.
I said, I just went off. I was like, God, why? Why would you do this to me? Like, I'm already humiliated. I'm already like to the point of like losing everything in my life because of this horrible thing. Why would I have to go through this more humiliation? Right. Was it just like to see if I, would do? And I was to the point where I was just sort of resenting God. And I remember I don't have too many times I can say that God showed me anything, but that I actually heard the voice of God. But I remember God showed me a picture, and the way that God speaks to me is actually through video, right? Like in my mind, like and He showed me a video, and it was a courtroom, and I was in the courtroom, and I was sitting at one of the 2 front seats, at the table, the desk, and Satan was on this desk, and I was on this desk, and Satan was walking up to the bench where God was with a big bundle of scrolls, this big little scrolls all throughout. Yeah. And he was putting them on the desk, and he was in the middle of giving his rant. He said, I demand that Joey Dupont walk out all the consequences of his sin. He forgave that guy, Darren, but he wants him to have something evil happen to him. So he hasn't allowed him to not walk out the consequences. Because in my heart, I can say I wanted him to get cancer.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wanted him to die. I wanted something evil to happen. I even put biblical principles and said, hey, David said, kill my enemies and let them. Yeah, and I had this in me.
Strike thee.
And while the Lord was looking at the things on the table, the back of the courtroom was like a Matlock moment.
Right.
The door swung open, and there I am standing in the back.
Right.
And I have a scroll, and I read it out loud. I, Joey Dupont, being of sound mind and body, do hereby release. And when I got through with reading that scroll, instantly all the scrolls on his podium disappeared. And God spoke to me at that moment and said, you'd forgiven him for this sin, but you wanted him to walk out the consequences, and that wasn't true forgiveness.
That's right.
And what you just did, what your story that you told me, was that you released your partner. Right. You didn't go after him and sue him and say you didn't want consequences to have to come on him. And I think, man, that's a powerful tool. The tool of forgiveness is really the reason why you're able to move forward.
That's right.
Because if you would still be in litigation.
Right.
It might have gone on for years.
Years and years.
And you would have been in a pivot.
Right.
Spiraling in a circle. Instead, you managed to lay it down.
Yeah. And just looking at it in the flesh, I could have easily spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars going after him to never get anything. Because what if he did not have the means to make good of if he loses the lawsuit, right? So, yeah, for me, I think you're exactly right. That forgiveness was less about him, and it was all about me.
It's all about you.
Once I released it, he's on my prayer list every morning, and some mornings it rears its ugly head. That whole forgiving people 70 times 7 per occurrence type deal. Well, it walks through, because sometimes I'm praying for him and I'm like, Lord, why am I still praying for this knucklehead? But then I just seek him. I say, you know what, Lord, I honor you, and by honoring you, I want to honor him and his family, and I pray blessings over him. I hope that he's found a good job. He's getting his financials in order.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
The thing that I had to do was I couldn't pray for Darren. In all honesty, I know the Bible says, bless those who curse you and pray for those who spitefully use you and all that great stuff. But I couldn't pray for him as a man. But I pictured him as a child.
Right.
As like a little toddler, like a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And I started praying for him.
Yeah.
Because I could pray for the 3-year-old. I mean, who could kick a 3-year-old? And
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like if he did something, he was innocent.
That's right.
And so I started praying for that 3-year-old in my mind. And that's how I walked that out.
Yeah.
The unfortunate end to it is that he did end up taking his life a few years later. And the thought that I have is like, if I hadn't had that moment, I would still today be in that unforgiveness.
Right.
If I hadn't had that moment of purity and clarification, I would be in that forgiveness. So I'm just encouraging, man. It's like you're walking out of this, and your business is going to be blessed, and you're going to move forward. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
That's right.
In the future, brother.
Same.
So I'm so grateful for you being on the show, and thank you for taking the time to share with us, and looking forward to having you again. I hope you can come back and be a part of the show.
Anytime.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode of The Tenacious Entrepreneur. Thanks for tuning in and being part of this journey. Are you an entrepreneur with a tenacious story? We want to hear from you. Visit our website, tenaciousentrepreneur.com, and click on the Tell My Story link. If you got something valuable from today's episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow entrepreneur. Keep pushing forward, and remember, the end is only the beginning. A new episode drops every Wednesday at 7:14 a.m. Until then, remember to stay humble, stay focused, and be tenacious.